In our ongoing study in the Gospel of Matthew, we now turn to chapter 7, and we are going to read verses 1 to 6. I will be reading from the Amplified Bible. Do not judge and criticize and condemn others, so that you may not be judged and criticized and condemned yourselves. For just as you judge and criticize and condemn others, you will be judged and criticized and condemned. And in accordance with the measure you deal out to others, it will be dealt again to you. Why do you stare from without at the very small particle that is in your brother's eye, but do not become aware of and consider the beam of timber that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me get the tiny particle out of your eye, when there is the beam of timber in your own eye? You hypocrite, first get the beam of timber out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the tiny particle out of your brother's eye. Do not give that which is holy, sacred thing to the dogs, and do not throw your pearls before hogs, lest they trample upon them with their feet and turn and tear you into pieces. One of the ways we judge biblical interpretation, and this is one of the sound principles, and we're not saying it's an exclusive principle. What we're saying is one of the principles we judge biblical interpretation is how it fits into human experience. And this we are not saying it is the primary way we judge scripture. In the opening verses of Matthew, we have Jesus teaching on the need to judge others. The question is, of course, what Jesus meant here. Does he mean that we are in no way and on no account to ever judge anyone? We could say this is the case, but here we go back to what we said in the beginning of the paragraph and ask if that is a true and sound understanding of Scripture in light of human experience. Can we actually find people who have never judged one another in the church, for example? The answer is no. In fact, you will probably find that some of the most judgmental and most critical of people in your life are going to be in the life of the church. The key to understanding what Jesus is saying in the passage is the illustration in verses 3 and 4. In other words, we cannot separate verses 1 and 2 from the illustration in 3 and 4. You separate 1 and 2, you will not understand what Jesus is saying. Jesus in the illustration is not talking about the evils of judging others, rather the evils of judging others as a means to exalt oneself. There are two persons in the illustration. One has a very large and obvious fault. The person is oblivious to it. Is this person concerned with what is correct? The answer is no. This person harps on the other person's faults as a means to exalt himself. The passage is not about the evils of judging others. It is about the evil of judging others to make ourselves look better. It is not about about judging. It is in fact about the pettiness of the human condition. One of the roles of parents is to provide discernment in our children. They need to be able to make judgments when dealing with people. The person who offers them candy if they get into the car is to be judged one way. The person who hit the ground hard after spinning out on the patch of ice on the sidewalk is to be judged with mercy, and a helping hand is to be extended outward. We expect our children to be careful about who they pal around with. It is not the case of income or skin color, but of character and substance. You see, in many and diverse ways, we expect our children to make judgments. The role of us as parents is not to familiarize them with every possible scenario and situation that they could ever run into. That is impossible. What we want to give our children is the broad tools to make appropriate judgments. In fact, we could say a part of maturity and entering to adult years is this very sort of judgment. Part of growing up in the faith in some ways is no different than the experience of growing up from childhood. Part of spiritual maturation is discernment. The Apostle John writes in his letter, "Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world." 1 John 4:1 in the NIV. I offered up 3 examples in the previous paragraph of what we want of our children. John gives us here one example where we need to make a judgment about people claiming to be one thing spiritually and in reality not upholding Christian standards. The principle that John is giving us is the ability spiritually to make appropriate judgments. Matthew 7:6 tells us not to throw away our faith because we have not judged people appropriate. If you are to thrive in the faith in the church, you must see who people are. Not everyone in the church is living for Christ or living up as they should for Christ. If you do not see that, then you can destroy your faith by getting caught up with them.